Hey YouTubers, it's Danielle. So today I'm going to be bringing you guys my Deadpool 2 review because I was just at the theaters yesterday seeing it for the first time. So I will be doing my full-fledged review on the whole entire movie, and there will be spoilers throughout. So if you haven't seen the film yet, then I highly suggest you go watch it before watching this video because there will be a ton of spoilers about all the Easter eggs and references that they put inside Deadpool 2. Now, I do have to say that this Deadpool movie is probably actually even better than the very first Deadpool movie that ever came out. Sure, I loved the first Deadpool film. I loved it, but this one is even better. They brought it. They brought it with all the CGI that they had. You can tell that they spent a little bit more money on this because of all the special effects that were put into play with several of the characters. So I'm going to break it down with some Easter eggs that I caught throughout, my favorite moments, funny moments, everything. So if you guys are brand new to the channel, you should be sure to subscribe because I do new comic book videos every single week here on this channel. So yeah, let's get into this review. So the very first thing that I want to point out is the opening little thing that they did where they had a montage of him just going around on his, what Wade calls it, his world tour. Basically, he's going around fighting crime basically everywhere that you can think of. The Yakuza, the sexually aggressive canines, the scene where he was in the bar with the blonde wig referencing Lady Deadpool, as well as the stripper heels to make it look like something out of Magic Mike. Now, that is one of the many Easter eggs I managed to catch throughout the film, but my favorite moment during that whole entire sequence was the fact that they were playing 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton, which is one of my favorite songs ever from the movie 9 to 5 with Jane Fonda, Dolly Parton, and Lily Tomlin. So that was basically the reference that I caught there. And then he comes back, he sees Vanessa, and spoiler alert, now I did say there would be spoilers, Vanessa dies in the opening of the film, and obviously that causes him to go into a downward spiral, wanting to commit suicide. And there are several moments that I managed to catch throughout there, like they watched the movie Yentl together, which is a famous Barbra Streisand movie, and he makes a joke about how Let It Go from Frozen sounds like Papa Can You Hear Me from Yentl. I actually found that to be really, really hilarious. And then we see, after he blows himself to bits, we see Colossus coming to try and get him on a new path of life. So he brings him to the X-Mansion, and all throughout we see a variety of Easter eggs in the X-Mansion, and that's what I was looking forward to the most, was seeing that. Now, I have to say, my favorite funny moment in the X-Mansion had to be when Negasonic Teenage Warhead comes with Surge, and she reveals that Surge is her girlfriend, and she calls Deadpool basically an ignorant jackass or something along those lines. I found that to be hilarious when she said, "This is my girlfriend." I absolutely love that. I wasn't expecting to go there. I didn't know that Negasonic Teenage Warhead is an LGBT character. I had no idea about that, so the fact that that was in the movie, that was kind of what? Because I don't really read a lot of the X-Men comics, so to hear Negasonic Teenage Warhead say, "This is my girlfriend," I was like, okay. And then they decide to train him to be part of the X-Men, and there are several Easter eggs that I will go back to that were in the X-Mansion that were my absolute favorite pieces in there. So they go on to make him an X-Men trainee, and they go to pick up Fire Fist, Rusty Collins. And Rusty Collins, if you're not familiar with the character itself, I remember the character from an episode of the X-Men 90s animated series, from the episode called No Mutant is an Island, which was a Cyclops-centered story arc where he goes back to the orphanage that he once lived in Nebraska, and that's where he meets Rusty, who is adopted by a very classic Daredevil and Jessica Cruz villain not Jessica Cruz, Jessica Jones' villain, the Purple Man. So basically the whole plot of that episode was Cyclops going off to save Rusty, Boom Boom, and a few other New Mutant children characters that were in that episode that were featured. So Rusty Collins, definitely, they gave him a completely different look with Julian Dennison playing him, but I actually didn't mind the non-traditional casting because Julian Dennison was actually perfect for this movie, so I find it very hard to complain about the fact that Rusty Collins doesn't really look, too much like his original comic book counterpart, but it gets into the stuff with Cable, and obviously when we see Cable, we see him holding a teddy bear, and at first I thought, oh, the teddy bear, it's like burnt on one side. Is that supposed to be like a montage for Cyclops like suffocating and dying from the Terrigen mists during the time he dies? Like, I thought that was almost a reference to it because it looked so similar to that, like the burning of the skin that Cyclops went through in that comic arc. I thought that was kind of like a montage to that almost, and we see that Cable is like looking at himself, like you can tell that the technovirus is starting to kill him over time, and they didn't really get into too much of Cable being the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey's clone, Madeline Pryor. They didn't really get into that, which, I mean, I'm assuming that they're going to get into that in, like, later films, so I didn't mind that they didn't do Cable's full origin story, but they definitely did tweak quite a few things, and I will get into that much, much later. So, Cable, like, basically, after Deadpool, like, majorly screws up with the Rusty Collins thing, like, trying to get through to the kid, like, basically saying, did this guy hurt you? Did he hurt you? Like, he was basically asking Rusty, are these people that are part of this orphanage, like, hurting you? Are they abusing you? And the kid was pretty damn honest, and you actually, like, notice later on that orphanage is actually owned by the Purifiers from the comic books, and you can just tell that it's Purifiers considering Rusty was like burning down a whole entire church that looked like similarly to something that the Church of Humanity would use. So you can just tell automatically that orphanage is owned by the Purifiers, which was started by Colonel William Stryker in the comics, who also had groups like the Friends of Humanity. So I automatically noticed the Purifier references, and they're actually going to be the main focus of the Gifted television series next season. So I will probably be doing Easter egg videos for the Gifted as well. So anyway, moving on from that, we see Deadpool and Rusty basically getting transferred to the prison, and it's snowy, it's in the mountains, it's up in Canada, and obviously I realized that was a reference to Alkali Lake, which was a huge major point in X2, and even like the beginning of X-Men The Last Stand, where Jean Grey like comes up out of the water as the Dark Phoenix at Alkali Lake, which was where she sacrificed herself to save her friends, and it was also the place where Wolverine was experimented on during X-Men Apocalypse. So obviously Alkali Lake, major X-Men film Easter egg right there with all the references to Alkali Lake. So I love the fact that they reference that, and when we saw Black Tom Cassidy, I was like, oh my gosh, because I like realized what that meant, because Black Tom Cassidy is a villain for Deadpool and for X-Force, but while I wasn't expecting him to have a big role in this film, I was actually kind of surprised by like later events that happened, and I will continue on with that. So basically they recreate the scene from Shawshank, and even though I never saw Shawshank, basically it was the huge prison riot which Black Tom Cassidy starts up, and then basically Deadpool and Rusty get transferred back to their cell, and that is when the events pick up of Cable finding them, and he says, my name's Cable, I'm here for the kid. And basically Rusty tries to make a friend in the jail, and obviously we see later on who that is, and it was definitely a character that I was actually hoping for this movie to be done correctly. because it was a character that wasn't used correctly in the third X-Men film, so I will get into that later on. So basically, Deadpool goes to find Weasel, and Wade tells Weasel, we're going to form a super duper group. So they decide to form up the team of X-Force, and with X-Force, we have a variety of people coming in. We have Vanish, we have Shatterstar, we have Domino, and Domino, I have to say, was one of my favorite characters in the whole entire film. She was so good. I loved the character Domino. She was so good in this movie. The action that she managed to pull in several of the sequences, jumping down from the plane, was just awesome. But I was kind of surprised that all the X-Force members, they all die after jumping out of the plane. I was actually expecting them to be landing down smoothly, but no, that wasn't the case really. But during his rant, that, if you want to call it that, his speech to the X-Force team, he basically says, the X-Men, that's a sexist name, we're going to call this team X-Force. So, I actually found that to be hilarious that he accuses, the name of the team X-Men to be, sexist or something, because there's also women on the team as well. So, I found that to be absolutely hysterical, and Domino obviously going into the truck, fighting all those guys. I found that to be one of the best scenes in the whole film. And next thing you know, Cable comes in, and he's fighting both Deadpool and Domino, and we see Deadpool basically recreating the scene from X-Men Origins Wolverine, where he's doing the thing with the swords, and he drops a bunch of references to Thanos, One-Eyed Willy, the DC Universe, basically taking all the shots that he can at everything across the board. I found it to be hysterical when he would call, when he called Dopaminder Brown Panther, Domino Black Widow. There were just a ton of jokes relating to Avengers Infinity War, because they are only, basically, no, they're basically a month apart from each other in terms of premieres and releases, so of course it makes sense that they would put as many Avengers Infinity War jokes as they possibly can put in there. So I loved the references to the DC Universe. He goes, oh, it's so dark. Are you sure this isn't the DC Universe? Because the DC Extended Universe is the darkest thing. If you want to go dark with comic book movies, then the DC Extended Universe is probably the closest thing to it, especially with Justice League, Wonder Woman. Those were some pretty dark films, I do have to say, while Avengers is very lighthearted and very bright and spirit and stuff like that. So I do have to say that I do have to agree, the DC Extended Universe is dark as hell. It really is dark. So it continues on, and afterwards, shortly afterwards, we see the Juggernaut get released. And as soon as I saw Juggernaut, I was like, yes, because I just felt as though in X-Men The Last Stand, I feel like they attempted to do way too much with that CGI fight sequence that they did in that film, and it just looks bad. It just looked bad. And as a result, Juggernaut didn't look the way that he should have looked. He didn't, he just didn't hold up to what people would have expected for Juggernaut. So when we saw the full CGI Juggernaut, I was like, yes, this is perfect. And then I actually find out that Ryan Reynolds provided the voice for Juggernaut, which I thought to be absolutely amazing. So now we have several CGI characters, Juggernaut and Colossus. I just absolutely love the fact that we have two CGI characters that are complete CGI. So we're going to move on from there, and we see basically Cable telling Wade, I lost my wife and I lost my kid at the hands of Rusty Collins' Fire Fist. And when he explains that, you see those flashbacks to his daughter and his wife, and obviously they make a reference to the name Hope Summers, who is Cable's daughter and Cyclops and Jean Grey's granddaughter. So obviously, that's a major reference, the like the Hope Summers Easter egg. I actually really loved that Easter egg. That was one of my favorite ones that I managed to catch throughout that. I do have to also say that it was absolutely hilarious when he shows up at the X-Mansion and he points out that there's, like, nobody there. Like, there practically is nobody there in the X-Mansion. It's like there's only 3 characters in there now. Surge, Negasonic, and Colossus. Like, they're the the 3 characters that are actually shown, really, almost throughout the whole film for X-Men characters. So I actually really enjoyed him trying to call Colossus through a megaphone, basically being like, hey, the Juggernaut's loose, we need you here. And so they go off to the orphanage with Dopaminder. They go off to the orphanage where Rusty Collins is determined to kill all those kids and the person who's part of the Purifiers with the help of the Juggernaut. And obviously with that, Deadpool is determined to set Rusty on a better path. He wants to set him on a better path. He wants to, prevent what happened to Cable's family, because he is sympathetic to the fact that Cable, he lost his wife and his child when he himself lost his fiancée, Vanessa, at the beginning of the movie. So you actually do get to see somewhat of a similarity between Cable and Deadpool. And I actually really loved Josh Brolin as Cable. He was really, really, really good. I do have to say, very impressive as Cable. Everything I could have expected, because Cable is one of my favorite comic book characters ever, next to Rachel Summers. They're both 2 of my favorites out of Jean Grey and Scott Summers' children. So he lived up to my expectations. And we basically get the whole fight sequence between Colossus and the Juggernaut, and I absolutely loved it. It was perfect. It was everything that you could ever want it to be, a fight between Colossus and Juggernaut. I was blown away in the theater when I saw that, and I think that was probably what actually got the most cheers in my theater, and I think that what got the most laughs, I think I can pinpoint what got the most laughs in my theater, but that's going to be broken down later as one of my favorite Easter eggs. I'm saving that as the best for last. Now, basically, the ending of the film ends with Deadpool making the sacrifice to die at the hands of Cable, basically releasing a bullet on Rusty. He takes the bullet for him by putting the collar on his neck to kill himself, essentially. But then Cable, realizes, no, this shouldn't be the case at all. So he actually uses the last bit of his technology, the last bit of juice in his technology, to go back in time and prevent Deadpool's death from ever actually happening, because the whole joke of the whole film was Deadpool dies at the end of this movie, but they made it so that it never happened, which I actually did enjoy, because there's so many jokes about the messed up timelines and stuff like that with the X-Men films and the continuity issues and all sorts of stuff. So that was actually a really nice touch that they put in Cable's time traveling abilities and all of that. And I actually really enjoyed the fact that Deadpool was you did it for me. Heads or tails? Heads, you did it for me. Tails, you did it for me. Basically, he was joking to Cable, you did this for me. You did this for me to save my life. You did this for me. So I actually really enjoyed that scene, and Cable basically tells him, I'm going to be sticking around a while, which, as you can expect, Cable is going to stick around for quite some time. And basically the whole message of the film, from what I took away from it, especially since Deadpool said, this is a family movie. It's basically finding the meaning of family and surrounding yourself with family. And I actually really did enjoy the fact that was that montage of them all walking together side by side, shoulder to shoulder that. Cable, Colossus, Domino, Deadpool, and Rusty, the 5 of them walking together shoulder to shoulder that. And Deadpool basically realizing, he found a family. He found this family, and he didn't, and I don't think that was his intention, to find that meaning of what family means, but he found it in the end, and that's the whole point of the film, is that it is a movie that basically makes you think to yourself, like, what is the meaning of family if you lost your parents, if you lost your siblings, if you have basically nobody to call your family, like how do you build that for yourself? So that actually had like a deeper meaning than like anything else in the film. Now we're going to get into post credits and some of my favorite Easter eggs. So one of my absolute favorite Easter eggs in the whole entire film had to be aside from Deadpool, like basically having the cerebral helmet on his head, joking about how it smells like Patrick Stewart. Like, aside from that one, my top favorite one had to be the montage of when he like opens the door and we see Nicholas Hoult as Beast along with several other like group of the X-Men, like Mystique, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, all inside there. And I found out that was actually like a cut that they took from when they were filming X-Men Dark Phoenix. They decided to take that green screen that they were using from that and basically overlap it into this film and basically have it be like a little joke. And I actually loved that. That was like one of my favorite Easter eggs, I think, that I caught throughout the whole entire film, was seeing the X-Men, Quicksilver and, Beast and everybody. I actually really did enjoy that Easter egg. Like, that was my favorite, and my other favorite has to be the post-credits. The post-credits were everything that I wanted. Like, I love the fact that Deadpool says, we're naming our child Cher. So, basically, he has Negasonic and Surge fix Cable's technology so that way he can go back in time and basically fix everything that's wrong. So he saves Vanessa, tells her we're totally naming our child Cher, and then he goes back to fix even more things that are wrong. So there's a possibility that Black Tom Cassidy could possibly be alive in the newly set timeline that he created. I don't know, but when Black Tom Cassidy died, I was like, what? No, there's no way they're gonna just throw him out. There's no way they're just gonna throw him out. So they were redo the whole thing with the X-Force, him basically telling Peter, go home, go. So there's a possibility that other X-Force team members are kind of, a little bit more alive than we think they are in the new timeline that Deadpool had created. So there's a possibility that we can get Terry Crews again. There's a huge possibility that we can get them all again. So that's a good thing. And the other things that he fixes, oh my gosh, I think that my other favorite Easter eggs had to be all the Wolverine references and the references to Hugh Jackman, like the little thing that he had in the beginning of the movie of Wolverine's death, what it looked like in Logan with the wood sticking out of his back and stuff like that. I found that to be absolutely hysterical that they included that in there. And in addition to that, they basically redid, kind of in their own way, redoing what happened during X-Men Origins Wolverine, where he basically kills off that past version of himself from the other timeline of what Deadpool had looked like during X-Men Origins Wolverine, which got a ton of backlash and criticism. So that was basically their way of fixing that. So I actually really like the fact that they went back and they decided, you know what, we're gonna fix that. So that's a good thing. That's good. And the other, oh my gosh, my other favorite moment, him shooting Ryan Reynolds before he gets to even read the Green Lantern script. I found that to be absolutely hysterical that Ryan Reynolds, basically as Deadpool, shoots himself before he can even read the Green Lantern script. So I found that to be absolutely hysterical. And they play Turn Back Time by Cher. And overall, the whole movie, I have to give it an A because overall, the violence, they turned it up to 11. I feel like they took everything from the first Deadpool movie and basically turned it all the way up to 11. And it was just an awesome movie all around. And I enjoyed every minute of it. There was not one moment that I wasn't enjoying the movie. It was overall pretty good for what it was, which is a stupid, dark comedy with tons of action and violence. So I do have to say that it was a really, really good movie, and I'm looking forward to what's to come with the X-Men Dark Phoenix movie and with the New Mutants. So I already said before that I will be doing reviews for both Dark Phoenix and the New Mutants when they come out, and if a Comic-Con trailer does get released for X-Men Dark Phoenix, I will be doing a type of Easter egg video for that as well, because let's face it, X-Men Dark Phoenix, the Dark Phoenix saga is my favorite saga of all the X-Men comic books. So make sure to subscribe for what's to come in the future, and I will talk to you all next time with another video. Bye everyone, stay awesome.